Mike Hansen, Texas Dad Lawyer. We have some news out of New Mexico on Elijah Hadley's shooting. Now, this interview involves Faith Igbuno, a reporter from Albuquerque, talking to a law enforcement officer, getting a professional opinion about whether proper protocols were followed. And you can see in the quote up at the top, protocols were not followed. What's concerning is the young man is alive after the initial rounds were fired because he's talking. Folks, that's exactly what we talked about in my video when I broke it down, talked about the first shooting, the second shooting, some of the concerns, looking at the law and whether either of the shootings would have been justified, but certainly leaning towards the fact that the second shooting would not have been justified under law. Now, this officer looks at another aspect of it, and he uses training that they're given in the academy to come to the conclusion that proper protocols were not followed. This adds another element to the analysis. I'm going to go through this real briefly, and then at the very end, it gives us an update about what's going on with the case, where it's at, and we'll talk a bit about that. First off, we know that there was a rally held, and here's a picture from it. I was mistaken when I initially thought that Elijah Hadley had only been shot 15 times. That's what the reports were coming out and saying. I believe it's been clarified since then. He was shot 4 times during the first incident and then 15 times during the second incident. So clearly the officer who was responding to the welfare check did empty a magazine and, used every bullet possible to shoot Elijah Hadley. Now, kudos to many of you who in my comments pointed out that this officer failed to secure the firearm or the alleged firearm, which was a BB gun, an airsoft gun, after it had been tossed. Now, Mr. Darren White comes out with this analysis. He talks about what you learn in the academy and that after that gun has left the individual's hand, once the officer communicates it to dispatch that somebody's been shot, he gets his med kit. The first thing he should be doing is securing the weapon. Many of you identified that as an improper procedure that was done by this officer. If he believed there was a threat at that time, he really should have been able to go and secure that weapon that was on the ground, and it may have prevented a second shooting ever being done at all, or him perceiving that there was a continued threat, even though the child was on the ground, bleeding, communicating with the officer that it was a BB gun, and clearly not a threat, not in a position to use a weapon to harm this officer. If he had followed those protocols and went and secured the weapon, that gun at that point would not even be considered or possibly considered a threat. And he would have known that it was not an actual gun, it was just a BB gun. Now, former Deputy White also hits on a point that I made. You see that he goes through the analysis and he says what's concerning when watching the video is that the young man is alive after the initial rounds were fired because he's talking. He's talking to the deputy. Had the deputy secured the weapon, got emergency services while he's still alive, he may have survived. That was my take as well. And so we know that even law enforcement officers are on our side with this analysis. The question is whether the local district attorney's office, when they review all the evidence, the witness statement, when the only witness available is the officer who shot the child, whether that's going to all add up and whether it's going to favor an indictment. Clearly, the opinion of the public is that it should, based on what we see and feel as an excessive use of force, as well as just an excessive use of bullets and a child that's completely helpless on the ground. What is really intriguing about this former deputy's opinion is that many of you have commented that you believe law enforcement needs more training. Yet, this former law enforcement officer's opinion is that if this deputy had simply used the training he would have already been given, that all law enforcement officers have, that this weapon would have been secured and possibly the young man's life may have been spared. You can see in the top right here that he believes that the second account never should have happened. And that's because the gun should have never been in a place where it could have the opportunity of being used. So we don't even need to get to more training in this particular incident, because had the training been followed, according to an expert, in their opinion, the second incident does not happen and this child may still be alive. And so here we go again with an officer who failed to follow proper protocols. So one of the biggest questions is, what is going on with this case? It happened June 25th. Why is it taking so long for justice to be done? Well, this reporter did a great job at at least letting us know where it's at in the process by asking some questions to the right people. We know that it's no longer being investigated, that it's being reviewed by the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office. Now, one of the most baffling things, because I'm not used to seeing this, is that the deputy, the individual who's under investigation, has not been identified, and there's been no transparency on the identity of this person who engaged in the conduct that resulted in the loss of life for a child. The Otero County Sheriff's Office is not even returning calls to reporters. It's just completely abnormal to see no cooperation and no transparency in this process, especially since all these people work for us as public servants. You'd think we would at least get a call back. However, it's not happening. Now, we can only hope that the prosecutors on this case are able to very quickly and efficiently go through the evidence, convene a grand jury, and possibly get a true bill or the equivalent, a indictment against the deputy for the conduct that has occurred. Now, they will have more evidence than we have. They will review the entirety of the dash cam, the entirety of the body-worn camera footage. They will look at autopsy reports. They will look at if the witness statement was provided by the deputy. They will look at that. Maybe they'll even get experts' opinions on proper protocol, as well as just anything that they can use to possibly better understand the situation. The fact remains that second shooting in no universe seems justified. It seems like overkill. It seems like the fact that a child's on the ground, bleeding, hurt, has now clearly in the footage what we've seen thrown off what could be a firearm but is not. It's just a BB gun to the side. That there's just no reason under law when you apply these facts to law for that to be considered a justified shooting. However, we're not in control of this. All we can do is continue to advocate. So happy that a bigger news outlet is continuing to follow it, even if it's just a New Mexico news outlet. Maybe others will pick up the story as time moves along. Unfortunately, this story is not getting the attention it deserves. I've seen that my original post has over 300,000 views, and the comments just are nonstop all day long. We're seeing people weigh in on what tends to be a favorable analysis, and as far as the justice portion for Elijah Hadley is concerned, a favorable analysis and an agreeable analysis to my own. If you haven't watched that whole video, watch it all. I'm getting tired of reading comments of people that only watch 15 seconds and don't know all the facts as portrayed in the video. But regardless, share this post as well as an update. That way we know that everybody knows who's trying to seek justice for Elijah Hadley, that it's with the district attorney's office, it's being reviewed, and that there's news outlets, because y'all are showing interest and concern, that are picking up and updating us on what the process looks like and what's happening with the case. Please reshare. Please follow me. If you have any other stories similar to Elijah Hadley that you need content on, please message me. My inbox is open. I'm always willing to provide information, simple analysis, a fair analysis on cases, and bring positive attention towards cases that involve especially children who have been killed for conduct that is unjustified, whether it be by a parent or a law enforcement officer. That is my passion, advocating for children. Please send me those stories. I'll try my best to cover them. Thank you.